All right, we'll call to order the regular council meeting here on Tuesday, April 19th. Once again at the W.C. O'Neill Arena Complex as we try a new venue out for council to gather. It is streamed through Zoom and through Facebook, so multiple options to attend tonight's meeting, which is good to see. We'll get right into the agenda, which first starts off with a recording of attendance. So I note that all members of council are here except for Councillor Blanchard, who might be joining us actually shortly. And wanted to recognize that we are on the unceded traditional territory of the Beskotu-Mogadi people. I'll be looking for a mover to approve the agenda as circulated with one friendly amendment. Deputy Mayor Akaji has requested that the skateboard conversation gets moved ahead because she'd like to contribute, and she does have to unfortunately leave early tonight. She let us know quite some time ago on that. So unless anyone's opposed to that, I'd just call it a friendly amendment because it is advertised on the agenda.
Your Worship, too, if you could, we have proponents of the Van Home Fair homes waiting to speak, and we asked them that they move their stuff towards the front of the meeting too, so that could be things under PED.
Under PED? Okay, sounds good. So we'll move that forward as well. And that's not a closed session, though. That's open session? Okay, sounds good. So with those two, again, advertised friendly amendments, I'll look for a mover to approve. First of all, the mover, Councillor Hurdle, seconder, Councillor...
Sorry, Your Worship, don't we need unanimous consent to amend the agenda?
Sure, absolutely.
So I might not be able to make the next meeting, so I'd rather have the skateboard discussion tonight. I'm prepared for it this evening, and I'm not sure I can make the next one.
Yeah, sorry, she's asking to bring it forward to the beginning of the meeting versus
Oh,
where
I'm
it
sorry.
was.
I
Yeah.
thought you meant to another meeting. No,
I was going to say, you're playing hardball with her
Whoa.
tonight.
I misunderstood. I apologize.
So we do have a mover with Councillor Hurdle, seconder. I got Deputy Mayor Akaji. All in favor of approving this agenda, please signify by saying aye. That's everybody. This agenda has been approved. Disclosure of conflict of interest. Okay, none. There is no presentations this evening and no minutes to approve. We do that every second regular meeting. So under communications, I'll make this pretty quick as it's, I love to see when at all possible staff discretion on this stuff because they're perfectly capable of making it. But to make everyone aware that there is a Lighted Up Blue campaign here in New Brunswick for the Alzheimer's Society. Mark Harris, who is the coordinator, requested that Town Hall be lit up with blue lights the week of May 23rd to May 27th, and also put on our community calendar and through our social media that we share posts to draw awareness. So I don't think there's any specific action of council for that one other than to make all of council aware if someone asks you why Town Hall is lit up in blue. Staff report, again, we do that every second meeting, so we're jumping right into the introduction, consideration, and passing of bylaws and motions. So I will go to the skateboard one first and then to Mr. Bourgeois after in respect to Deputy Mayor Akaji's time. So if you want to jump ahead, council, I believe that was 5-4 under. So 5-4. So it's a discussion on bylaw 015, skateboard scooters and inline skates in St. Andrews, which is RCS 220404. In page 66 of your council package, you'll note that there is a staff report. I was under the impression actually we were going to bring this forward for debate for the first reading, but it looks like we're just going to make it official if it's got unanimous council support to go to first reading now that you have a staff report, because it's always good to weigh in with staff reports before you go forward. So at this time, unless Mr. Spears, anything you wanted to add in addition to the report or anything that you want to highlight in it to make sure council's aware?
I guess only if you want to do it for the sake of the public, Your Worship.
That would be probably a good idea to do a quick summary if all possible.
So I guess several years ago, my apologies, several years ago, the council of the day put in a skateboarding bylaw to prevent the use of scooters, skateboards, and rollerblading down basically in the historical business district. Primarily, I think it was for safety. It was before my time, but it has been enforced since then. And it's only in that section that those that participate in that have the rest of the town, plus a skateboard park to do it, and plus the new trails. But in this age of active transportation, Councillor Gumashel, who will probably want to speak to it, says, feels that it's almost discriminatory, or that's not encouraging the kids that if they're out doing their exercise and as long as they're being careful, they're going to be okay to continue on those modes of transportation in the downtown. as always, the staff have expressed their concerns, is there's a lot of businesses where you go from doors right into the sidewalks, which we have concerns that people will run into them, especially in busy times. There's also the concerns with those red bricks, actually, for those on those modes of transportation with those little hard wheels, that if they catch a red brick the wrong way, they're going to go sprawling. So staff is recommending that we do not repeal it, but that is currently up to council on how you'd like to go with it.
Thank you very much for that quick summary, Mr. Spear. So at this point, I'll look for members of council that would like to speak. We're going to probably stick to the kind of rules of order where everyone gets the opportunity to speak first, and then if there's a need for a second round, we'll go through just to keep the healthy conversation going. I see Deputy Mayor Akaji with her hand, so I'll let you have the floor.
Thank you, Your Worship, and Council, especially for moving this forward for me tonight. Sorry, Chris, Mr. Spear, I didn't turn my microphone on. Anyway, but thank you very much for moving this up. I am very concerned. I was on the council that voted this in as a bylaw, and my concern is that we have a lot of seniors, we have a lot of tourists in the business district downtown, the historic business district. And I think that we don't move as fast as we used to. And kids do move fast. They can't stop on a dime with their skateboards or their scooters or whatever. And I understand that they wish to be seen downtown, but, and even though we've put at the youth center that there is a skateboard park, the temptation is we have some of those nice cement things that you would like to do your stunts on. I mean, as a kid, we did stunts on places like that. So we're not going to be able to stop them. We're also not going to be able to, I'm not saying that everybody can't ride a skateboard and stop. I'm just saying that for me, I'm concerned about the safety issue, as Mr. Spear spoke about. In the business district, it sometimes is so crowded. I would not like to see the skateboards or the inline skates or even the scooters down there. You have all the other areas for those 4, 5, 6 blocks. You can carry your scooter, walk downtown. I think that's more pertinent than for us to allow that. Who's responsible for if there's an accident, Mr. Spear, if, say, they wipe out on those red bricks? Is it the town that's liable for that? I think we had that discussion in previous councils, and we were worried about that. And that's my concern, is becoming a senior citizen. I'm worried about being run over by a skateboard or an inliner or whatever you want to call them. I would like to see the youth down there. I would like to see them participating in all kinds of things, but I don't think it's necessary for them to be on skateboards, scooters, and inline skates. I really think that the historic business district should be for walkers or, and we're going to have people that are seniors that have those motorized scooters themselves. And again, with skateboarders, I'm just concerned that either the youth are going to be injured or the seniors are going to be injured or somebody, it's going to be a hazard. And I am not voting for this to go through. I like the bylaw as it is, and I like it to remain as it is. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Absolutely. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just before we go to the next member of council that may wish to speak about the liability question, you seek that being a challenge, or do you think it would be no different than someone walking and tripping?
I guess it's the same type of liability for sure. It's just that their risk of getting hurt is higher because of the speed they're going, and people on foot are probably more stable than someone on that type of transportation, would be my thought. But it would be the same type of risk, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Spear. Any other member of council? I see Councillor Heenan.
Yes, Your Worship and Council. I would just like to have a clarification on a scooter. When I took the motorcycle training course, scooters were to be on the road as every other vehicle. I'm not sure, are we talking a different type of scooter? Are we talking a motorized scooter, or are we talking a push scooter?
No, you're talking a push scooter
Okay.
because it's mainly on the sidewalks.
That's
I guess the
okay.
big concern.
Then, Your Worship, I would support leaving the bylaw as is.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Councillor Hurdle.
Thank you very much. Can I be heard? Okay. Yep. So obviously, safety is a big issue as well, but I guess my question would be, would we also want to extend that to runners? I mean, a runner can run down the sidewalk as well and run into somebody and cause injury the same way. So if we're really, I mean, I'm being sarcastic when I ask this, of course, but, you know, if we're talking about it from a perspective of safety, then there is a bit of, you know, responsible usership. You know, if we have a runner running down the street, a door could open, they could hit the door, they could trip on the bricks, you know, they could run into someone who's moving more slowly, and I don't think we'd have the same appetite to limit running in the same way. So if we're talking about safety, I see it as a personal responsibility and due diligence for the users of the road to take it upon themselves to be responsible for other users. I'd also ask if we have any data on incidences before the bylaw came into place. Were people being injured? Did something happen that would make this make sense, or are we just is it fear that we're talking about?
I'll actually pass that over to Mr. Spears. That was before my time.
Yeah.
And to my knowledge, there is no data of any incidents. There might have been some isolated incidences, but nothing that's on record.
There were a few bicycle incidents with car doors. There were injuries there, but as far as a runner goes, they can stop faster than a skateboarder, I think. And that's just my opinion. Sorry.
Yeah, we'll keep, we'll keep in case other members of council, we can do a second roundabout if we'd like it. Any other member of council wish to speak on this at this time? Everyone's weighing in.
Thank you, Your Worship. I should start my timer because I could talk about this extensively for certainly my 10 minutes.
Start the timer.
But pardon me?
I said start the timer.
Yeah, start the timer. So I will try to be brief. When this bylaw was enacted in 2001, my math is correct, that's 21 years ago, and skateboarding and scooters and things and other modes of transport have changed a great deal over the past 2 decades. You know, I used to skateboard on the front street. I certainly didn't have a bylaw enforcement officer chasing me off the street in front of my house. And it is a historic business district, but it's also a place where people live, and they should be able to get around however they like. We put on a bike rodeo at the school each year, and it's very evident that not everybody has a bicycle. A lot of kids get around on skateboards and scooters and prefer to get around that way. It's actually easier to learn to ride a scooter, for example, than it is to ride a bike. And you can come out on May the 4th to the bike rodeo at VMES and see some of that stuff in action. So times have changed, and certainly this bylaw might have had a place way back when it was brought into effect, but I think it's time to recognize that we don't want to paint everybody with the same brush. Certainly to Councillor Hurdle's point, you know, the same thing could happen to a runner. It could happen to someone in an electric wheelchair. I mean, you can't just say, you know, like some of the things in the report, and I won't point to them specifically, but there seems to be an attitude that it's a certain demographic and a certain type of person that's using skateboards, and I don't think that's in fact the case. Skateboarding is now an Olympic sport with a very wide array of people using skateboards, and to have our staff downtown chasing both kids and adults who are choosing to skateboard off the street is not an effective use of our time, and I think our time could be better spent doing other things. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Thank you for your time, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Grimshaw. Councillor Neal.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I'll just start off by saying, honestly, I'm somewhat opposed to this as well. I've always been kind of curious as to why it came about. Personally speaking, again, I agree. I think times have changed. The use of these scooters, skateboards, inline skates, it's not just children that are using them. There's a lot of young adults that I've seen using inline skates, skateboards. They'll use them for transportation. They could be using them to go to and from work. And honestly, it feels kind of counterintuitive to our approach of, you know, active transportation and alternative methods to, you know, cars. It seems like we're kind of fighting ourselves in that mode. So I did have a question. Again, the way it's written, the skateboards, scooters, again, I think that we touched on that, but mobility scooters to me it would again fall into this category. And a mobility scooter is essentially a pedestrian. They're going to be on the sidewalks. you know, that combined, again, like Mr. Spear mentioned, with the addition of the skate park, I think for kids that want to go and do their tricks on these things, they are going to continue to go to the skate park. I don't personally see this as being an issue. During the busy summer months, again, we are considering tonight about the one-way street again. Part of the rationale I understand for that is because it, again, is going to create some space. It's apparently slowing down traffic on Water Street. So again, I don't see the inherent risk there. I think it's no different than again, people running or bicycling up and down Water Street. Again, young kids can bicycle on the sidewalks. Again, a bicycle is going to be traveling just as fast, if not faster, than any of these other modes, and the potential for accidents is there. So again, I agree there should be some responsibility in the users, and again, personally, I'm not in favor of it. Thank you.
So what I'm getting is 3-2, that this repeal will move ahead, but it will require 3 readings and a hearing of objection, so there's still plenty of opportunity for all members, and of course, Councillor Blanchard to weigh in. Otherwise, if he sees it the other way, I'm stuck in the middle. So we'll see where it all goes, but I am getting council consensus by 3-2 that we'll move that forward for a potential first reading at the next regular meeting in 2 weeks. All right, the next one, I realize that Mr. Bourgeois is on the line, I believe, or, so I don't know if Mr. Spear, you want to kick this off of kind of the conversation or where you want it to go, but I'll pass the floor over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship, and that'd be page 70 for those that are looking at it as we're jumping around.
Thank you for that.
So, Council, as you're aware, Mr. Bourgeois owns a piece of property in the corner of Bar Road and Mowat. And he's been in discussions with the town for several months about a potential project that he's calling Van Horn Garden Homes, which are single-story garden homes that there is several units that will be going along there in different phases. And you've been kept up to date as we've gone through various drafts of the development agreement. And so what before you tonight is 3 things. It's to go to 3rd reading, just so you notice that motion, Councillor Heenan, it should be to 3rd reading, not 2nd, for the zoning bylaw, which is going to rezone that piece of property to multiple residential, and then to approve the subdivision agreement and the development agreement. They're all there before you. We've talked about these back and forth. There should be very little surprises to council before here. And so I was in discussions with the proponents who are here. If there was any questions, I don't think they wanted to speak to it.
Okay,
They're
perfect.
just available if there's questions. But as of noon, they're agreeable with the conditions that were in there. So, you know, I guess the negotiations, unless you bring anything forward, are complete. I'm just looking at to see if anyone has any questions. I guess not.
No,
So
okay,
it's
perfect.
back to you, Council.
Perfect. I just wanted to see, since they were on, you wanted to move it forward, if there was any concern, but staff is comfortable with us proceeding to the next readings. Is that safe to say, Mr. Spear? Okay, so at this time, I will, we could, if anyone has anything to add, we can do it during the actual motion like we normally do. So Councillor Heenan, if you're comfortable proceeding with page 70, I'll get you to take us through the background and we'll get right into the motions.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. This is PED 211102, Amendment Bylaw Z21-04, 603366 NB Limited, Van Horn Garden Homes, rezoning for PID 01326081, 3rd reading. The background reads, 60336 NB Limited Van Horn Garden Homes is requesting a rezoning for PID number 01326081, a 3.4-acre lot at the southwest corner of Mowat Drive and Bar Road. The request is to move from estate residential zone to multiple residential 1 zone to creating a housing development. First reading was done on December the 13th, 2021. Views of the Planning Advisory Committee were received on January the 5th, 2022. Public hearings objections was January 10th, 2022. Second reading, January 17th, 2022. And the action and the motion that council gives leave for 3rd reading, Mr. Spear, to the amendment bylaw Z21-04 to the Town of St. Andrews under zoning bylaw Z21-01 for the rezoning of PID 013-26081 for 603366 in B Limited, Van Horn Garden Homes from estate residential to multiple residential 1 zone. And I so move this, your worship.
Thank you, Councillor Heenan. A seconder for that motion, Deputy Mayor Akagi. Any discussion on this motion? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye, your worship.
And we are in third reading, so this is bylaw number Z21-04, a bylaw to amend bylaw number Z21-01, being the zoning bylaw for the town of St. Andrews, being enacted by the council of the town of St. Andrews as follows. Number 1, bylaw Z21-01, the zoning bylaw for the town of St. Andrews is amended by changing the zoning as shown on the zoning map attached to the said bylaw, Schedule A thereof, for the lands shown on Schedule 1 attached here to and forming a part of hereof from ER, which is a state residential zone, to multiple residential, MR1 zone, subject to the property owner entering into a development agreement pursuant to the provisions of Section 59 of the Community Planning Act. Read the first time, the 13th day of December of 2021. Read the second time, the 17th day of January 2002, and read the third time, April 19th, 2022. So that has passed all 3 readings. We can go to the next motion, Councillor Heenan.
Thank you, your worship. Motion that council signs into a subdivision agreement with 603366 NB Limited Van Horn Garden Homes for PID 013-26081 as per section 6 of bylaw number 69 subdivision bylaw, and I so move.
Thank you. And a seconder for that motion will be Councillor Hurdle. Discussion on this one? Call the question. All those in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. That is everybody, and that has passed as well. And to the next one.
Your worship and council, motion that council signs into a development agreement with 603366 NB Limited Van Horn Garden Homes for PID 013-26081 as per section 59 of the Community Planning Act, and I so move.
And once again, I'll be looking for a seconder. Councillor Gumashell, and discussion on this one. Councillor Neal.
Your Worship, just a question again with the development agreement. From the views of PAC, I was just wondering how we are incorporating those into the development agreement. Is that already been done? I'm thinking specifically the requirements around the buffering and.
That was actually Schedule B of the subdivision agreement, so the first agreement.
Okay, sorry, I wasn't sure
No,
exactly where it was.
No, it's
but-
okay. So that's actually an attached schedule with the whole motion there to make sure that's followed through by staff and the development team.
But it's a
Okay.
good question because it did send a reminder about their recommendation. So thank you for that, Councillor Neal. Anyone else on that one? If not, I will call the question. All those in favor, signify by just raising your hand. Everybody, so that has been carried as well. So with that, appreciate the developers being online today. You're welcome to stay for the rest, but from a municipal standpoint and a council that's looking forward to hopefully having some new housing options in the community. It was a long road. We appreciate your patience and happy to see that that's finally going to be signed, and appreciate council as well, their flexibility in helping get that done as well. So at this point, we will jump back to Finance and Administration, which would be Deputy Mayor Akagi in regarding to the Princess Royal Water and Sewer Renewal.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. So my first one is FA 220407. And it's the tender award TSA 2022-01 Princess Royal Street Water and Sewerage Renewal. So the background is this. As part of the 2022 capital budget process, Council has set aside $402,000 for the upgrade of water and sewer mains on Princess Royal Street. TSA 2022-01, Princess Royal Street Water and Sewage Renewals closed on April the 5th, 2022, with the following submissions that have HST excluded. Fairville Construction Limited, $257,600. Midi Construction Limited, $260,000, $260,385, excuse me. Terra X Incorporated, $299,530. L. Sanford and Sons Limited, $321,952.27. And Coastal Enterprises Limited, $321,964. And Fundy Contractors Limited, $434,687. Staff agrees with the consultant's recommendations to accept the low bid from Fairville Construction Limited. So the motion is that council awards tender TSA 2022-01 Princess Royal Street Water and Sewage Renewals to the Fairville Construction Limited in the amount of $257,600, HST excluded. And I so move this, Your Worship.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and I'll be looking for someone else to move with. There's Councillor Heenan. Open up discussion on this one. Seems pretty straightforward. Very close tender, I will say, for sure. You don't see them always that close, but that's what's part of the process. So with that being said, I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving this motion, please signify by saying aye. That's everybody, so that one has been approved as well. And at this time, under Finance Administration, we're going to switch to just a quick discussion on the committee meeting structure for council, which is on page 12, otherwise known as FA 220408. Mr. Spear, I guess together, we can comment on this one. We basically did a new committee structure, and it's good for the public to know as well, that basically we had one-on-ones almost every month, and I don't know about you, but I always felt like it was a rushed process. I didn't like cutting people off because someone else was coming on, a little bit of confusion on some people wanted to join others and things like that. So I guess the recommendation through talking to staff and myself is we're wondering if we just own the fact that we don't want to have a committee meeting every time where we do the wording because it's just extra meetings and you actually don't really, you almost debate the motion and that's not what it's intended for. So what we're almost thinking is just having every 2 months a workshop just to review what the upcoming motions will be. It will be actually an optional workshop too as well, it's important to note. And it's optional in the fact that if you want to give input, you can be there. If you want to stay for the whole thing, you can. Otherwise, you can wait till your section. Really, it's just condensing, basically, instead of doing it twice, is just have everybody on it so they know what's going on. Because there's sometimes times where we're going somewhere. I'll give you an example. Not that we're debating it, but like the skateboard bylaw before us tonight, Councillor Gumashall brings it up. At that time, we would have enough people to say, bring it forward, right? It's just a workshop, right? So I guess we're looking to see if council would like to try that a little different than the one-on-ones. Keep in mind that if you ever do want a one-on-one with Mr. Spear, myself, and Mr. Knopper, all you have to do is request it at any time. I think there was some value in that too. But just from a standpoint of rushing everybody and then as well, things come forward without other people's input, we thought that this might be a good way to try. And again, it is still saving us time compared to the old system that we were on. Is anyone opposed to giving that a try, I guess is what I'll say? No? Okay, sounds good. So Mr. Spear, is there anything I'm forgetting or does that probably summarize it pretty good?
You hit the nail on the head, Your Worship.
Oh, thank you. It made me feel good. Thank you. And welcome Councillor Blanchard as well. We're gonna actually just jump ahead, if we will, because he's just getting settled. We're gonna go to Business, Tourism, Heritage, and Culture if council will allow me under Councillor Hurdle. And then we'll come back to Councillor Blanchard since he's just getting settled.
Thank you, Your Worship. So before us is BTHC 220403, and the subject is the Community Assistance Grant Application St. Andrews Farmers Market 50th Anniversary Celebration. On April 11th, 2022, the town of St. Andrews received a Community Assistance Grant request from the St. Andrews Farmers Market to help with their 50th anniversary celebrations. Please see the attached grant request for further details. The market is, as part of its 50th anniversary, would like to host some small weekly events during the market for July and August to build excitement around the celebrations. Events would include contests, raffles, kids' activities, prizes, and giveaways. The market is requesting support for the purchase of a new A-frame sign with a new logo, support with advertising the weekly events on market days in the paper, print, radio, and live coverage, and the total grant request being $2,028. The community grants awarded to date, $9,900, not including trust fund releases, budgeted $17,500, so the budget remaining is $7,600. And the motion before us is that council, grant or not grant, the St. Andrews Farmers Market's request for supporting the 50th anniversary celebrations from the Community Assistance Grant Program for 2022 at a grant of to be determined value.
Sounds good. I appreciate that, and we'll have to insert that. We'll call it an amendment, friendly amendment after. So we'll have to have a little bit conversation. I do have a question, I guess, before we put that in. It might help council. Is when I see the support with advertising the weekly events on market days in the paper, print, radio, live coverage. To me, that does speak to what Explore St. Andrews does. They actually provide grants for marketing of events. They just got done awarding the policy. Do you know if the market applied through that process for this? Because it actually, to me, feels like that's why we put the funds there, for them to do the tourist activities. But mind you, it is a civic thing as well, as a lot of residents do enjoy going there, but they do enjoy going to the other events in town too. So I don't know, Mr. Spear, if you have any detail on that or not.
I really don't know, Your Worship. I think when we were talking about the assistance grants back in February, theirs was a lot larger, if you remember. It was a little more vague, and so council had asked us to work with them to try to identify a couple of specific things that we could support. So I think that's why it came back like this.
Okay. So it is amended. So council, I guess I'll be looking for your thoughts on the amounts. I guess the new A-frame is $828, and then the marketing strategy would be $1,200. So I don't know if you want to, $7,000 left for the year. I don't know if you want to go the whole 2,000, or if you want to look at assisting with one of those, or what your thoughts are. But I guess I'll open it up to you to get someone's input on what they think we should do to proceed. Councillor Heenan.
Yes, Your Worship. I just noticed the market, as part of the 50th anniversary, would like to host some small weekly events during the market for July and August. If I go ahead and I read what is here and the amount, it doesn't mention anything about hosting, like any of the money's going towards hosting. It's for the A-frame and the coverages. So my question is, where's the money coming from to host these little events that they're going to have? Like, to me, that's where I would support putting money versus into the daily, weekly advertising, because the advertising, Your Worship, is already done. If we have money to give, it would be nice to have the raffles and events for the children and the community. Thank you.
The assumption would be that they're paying for the contest, raffles, and fun activities for kids. I think that they're planning out of their own budget of doing that part, yeah.
Thank you, Your Worship.
So would council's flavor be that I put in for the motion, the entire $2,028? Deputy Mayor Akagi?
Thank you, Your Worship. But you said that they could apply to get some of that money from the other
Explore St.
grants,
Andrews,
Explore
yeah.
St. Andrews. So maybe we could ask them if they would apply there, and we could give them the rest.
It's not up to council, but we're starting to get a little bit late in the season. They'll be starting up in 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah,
So
they missed
it'd be
the
nice to give
deadline.
them their, and to reply to Councillor Heenan, back at the day, when we first talked about the farmer's market initial, and I think it was $5,000 or $6,000, we'd actually said we didn't want to support prizes and stuff. And so Paul just texted me that actually adjacent businesses and their own internal funds will support all that. And so, the farmer's market is a vital part of the community through the summer and stuff, and they pay rent for the use of the market square and things, and they draw people to the downtown. And just for the sake of timing, able to get these things ordered in time for the start of the market, I think it's like the 21st, whatever it is, the weekend after the townwide yard sale. It'd be nice to be able to give them the okay so they can get this order and have it all set up in time. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thanks.
So
Deputy
then-
Mayor Akji, and then I'll go
So
to
th-
Councillor.
I guess, so then my suggestion would be that we give them the $2,028, since they have lowered it from 5,000. I think that's, showing initiative on their part, so
So you're
I would
moving-
support that.
So you're moving with that motion with that amount, and I have a
Yes.
seconder for that. We've got Councillor, got a couple councillors. I was looking this way already. Councillor Heenan. So at this point, since it is, got the amount in it, I'll open it up for debate. Does anyone got any objection to that particular amount? I will say it is a special year. It is their 50th anniversary. I think the only thing that we should ask is if they are putting out ads with the paper, print, and radio, that they mention the town of St. Andrews in those as well as a sponsor. It's just a good habit to do when you're paying for it. Councillor Hurdle?
Yeah, just one question. If this is a new sign, just to make it easier for them, is there a permitting process that they would have to go through for the sign? Can we make that faster for them, or less paperwork?
I think it's like, because it's a temporary thing, that it actually,
Ask Xander to come on, but I believe because it's a temporary sign, that it won't be required. But one way or the other, we'll discuss it with them and make sure they're in line and get the application in.
they have sandwich boards now that they'll put out. It's, I think, just a nicer, brand new one that probably recognizes the 50th anniversary. Perfect. Did I see another hand this way, did I, or no? No? Okay, we'll call the question then, just because we have a lot of things on the agenda. All those in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All right, so that has been carried. So, thank you, Deputy Mayor Akaji. Councillor Blanchard, I don't know if you've got connected yet? All right, we'll go back to you at this point.
Thank you, Worship. So I'm assuming we're back at PW 220408, downtown Water Street, one-way direction for 2022 Bylaw 18-01, motor vehicle bylaw. Is that where we are, Your Worship? Okay. All right, so the town of St. Andrews is fast approaching another summer season, and staff are seeking approval from council to make Water Street in a one-way direction. The public was polled in the fall of 2021 for suggestions on how to improve the one-way street. Please see the attached report for background details. Staff is recommending the following. One-way Water Street from Edward Street, from Edward Street to Frederick Street from Monday, May 16th, 2022 to Monday, October 17th, 2022. Restricting parking on side streets along Water Street. This has been done to ensure there is room for traffic to flow through side streets. Installation of an emergency and enforcement vehicle parking only spot beside the post office on King Street. Installation of a new accessible parking space at the corner of William Street and Water Street to help service the blocks of William and Edward Streets. And installation of 4 30-minute parking spaces along King Street. So the motion is that council approves the one-way Water Street starting Monday, May 16th, 2022 to Monday, October 17th, 2022 from Elizabeth Street to Princess Royal Street under Schedule C, one-way street of bylaw number 18-01, a bylaw to regulate vehicular traffic in the town of St. Andrews, and I so move.
I have a seconder for that one. Okay, we've got Councillor Heenan. Open that one up. Oh, sorry, Mr. Spear, did you have something to add?
Yes, Your Worship. You may have noticed that in the staff report, there's actually from Elizabeth Street to Frederick Street. There's additional signage and things that are needed that we aren't quite able to do. So in discussions with staff, we just prefer that motion be amended to say from Elizabeth to Frederick Street for this year, and then we'll look at getting prepared next year to extend it.
Can I get away with a friendly amendment on that one? I think I can get away with a friendly amendment on that one. Okay. All right. No one's going to call me out on it. I'll call it a friendly amendment. Okay. So, sorry, we had Councillor Blanchard move, and a seconder was Councillor Heenan. So we are open now at this point for any debate or discussion. Councillor Hurdle.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question comes about the fifth bullet point regarding the installation of 4 30-minute parking spaces along King Street, and more importantly, regarding enforcement of the 30 minutes parking spaces and overnight usage of the four spaces as well. To me, that would mean we're probably going to have to look at bringing in a commissioner to monitor those 4 spaces during the day, because that's, someone would have to be there every 30 minutes to be checking for that, or even more. So
That'd be correct. That's where the current bylaw enforcement officer shares the he is the wharfinger. So it'd be hard for him to be keeping on that specific. So you're right, that has been budgeted. But if council feels they want to go in that direction.
to bring in a commissioner to monitor? Oh,
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
think that'd be part of the budget process, that would have been included, correct?
Correct. There's like $10,000 already in the budget.
Counselor Heenan?
Yes, Your Worship, I just had an email from someone that said for me to clarify, it's Elizabeth Street to Frederick Street. Am I correct? That's the friendly amendment?
No, it was Edward Street.
Okay, well, in the motion, it says from Elizabeth Street to Frederick Street. So,
Mr. Spear said Edward.
Edward.
Okay, so it is Elizabeth.
yeah,
So Elizabeth, the 10th to Frederick.
From Elizabeth Street to Frederick Street is sufficient.
yes,
But I'm
that's the
getting-
amendment. Thank you very much. I just had
Yeah,
someone
no,
watch.
it's good to confirm what we're talking about, for sure.
Well, actually, Your Worship, the clerk has texted me saying actually he'd recommend going to Edward Street. so
Edward is what you said the
To
first
extending it before, no, that's liquor stores Elizabeth, to the St. Andrews Inns and Suites, to the block before.
Yes, it'd be kind of the Windsor House, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, just for everyone to visualize. Yeah.
So it's Edward Street?
Edward Street?
To Frederick. So it's been shifted a whole block west.
Yeah, that's, yeah, you know what, I hate to do it to you, but we should probably reread it, just, because of the confusion around it. I hate to, my friendly amendments, I'll be looking for someone to move to amend it, actually, if you don't mind. Counselor Heenan?
I will amend it.
Okay, so again, that's Edward to Frederick. Can I have a seconder for the amendment? Deputy Mayor Akaji, discussion on the amendment? Okay, all those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye. And that's everyone, so that has been amended, so now we have to vote on the original motion again, so mover for the motion that has amended. No, but we amended it, so we still need a mover and a seconder on that, right?
No, you can just vote.
We can,
once
'cause we
the
already did it
because-
before?
Yeah,
Wow.
so you're voting on the amended motion now.
Okay, perfect, so since we had a mover and a seconder on that, then any more debate, though? I don't want to cut people off. Okay, we'll call the question, all those in favor of, oh, go ahead.
We're going through all these motions, correct?
Correct.
We'll have an opportunity to debate.
Absolutely, we're individually, this is just the first one that we're tripping over a little bit here, so, anyone else?
Would it be possible, Your Worship, for Councillor Blanchard to read the motion, amended motion for the public?
Sure, do you mind? Yep.
Thank you.
So the amended motion is that council approves the one-way Water Street, approves the one-way Water Street starting Monday, May 16th, 2022 to Monday, October 17th, 2022 from Edward Street to Frederick Street under Schedule C, one-way street of Bylaw number 18-01, a bylaw to regulate vehicular traffic in the town of St. Andrews.
So, all in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye. That's everybody that has been carried. The next motion.
So the next motion, that council approves no parking anytime along the following streets: Elizabeth Street, Water Street to Queen Street, southwest side; Edward Street, from Water Street to Queen Street, southeast side; William Street, from Water Street to Queen Street, southeast side; Princess Royal Street, Water Street to Queen Street, southwest side; Queen Street, Elizabeth Street to Princess Royal Street, south side. Under Schedule B, no parking anytime of bylaw number 18-01, a bylaw to regulate vehicular traffic in the town of St. Andrews, and I so move.
Seconder for that motion, Deputy Mayor Akaji. Discussion on that one again.
Just a reminder, Councillor Blanchard, you have to remember to turn on your mic in the future.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any discussion on this one? Looks very similar to the past. It's kind of a fallout of doing it one way downtown. You need to have easy traffic flow on the street up from it, right? So, and I did have a member of the community tell me that their grass is finally starting to grow because people can't park there because they're used to the tires actually killing the grass. So, I guess a good side for the property owner. All right, I'll call the question. All those in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. That's everybody, and we're on to the next one.
Thank you, Worship. So the next motion is that council approves the installation of an additional parking for persons with disabilities at the corner of William Street and Water Street in front of 161 Water Street under Schedule G, parking for persons with disabilities under bylaw number 18-01, a bylaw to regulate vehicular traffic in the town of St. Andrews, and I so move.
Thank you, seconder. Again, Counselor Heenan, discussion on this one? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And that is, anyone opposed? That is everybody, so that one has been carried as well.
Next motion, then, Your Worship. That council approves an emergency and enforcement vehicle parking space beside the Canada Post Office on King Street under Schedule H, limited parking of bylaw number 18-01, a bylaw to regulate vehicular traffic in the town of St. Andrews, and I so move.
Seconder. I got Deputy Mayor Akaji. Discussion on that one? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor of this motion, please just raise your hand. That's everybody, so that has been carried. That's good. We'll make sure to send a notice out to Ambulance New Brunswick, the RCMP, the fire station, and of course let town bylaw enforcement know. I think having a spot for them to park downtown is a very good move for them to find it more easy to be in a boat downtown St. Andrews, especially at the busy time. Councillor Hurdle?
Sorry for not asking this earlier, but in terms of who gets to use it, if they're both downtown at the same time, they just will
First come.
first come, first serve?
Yep.
Thank you.
We're not going to move one of them, especially the RCMP. Okay, we'll go on to the next motion.
Thank you, Your Worship. So that council approves 4 30-minute parking spaces, 2 beside Scotiabank on King Street and 2 beside Home Hardware on King Street. Schedule H, limited parking of bylaw number 18-01, a bylaw to regulate vehicular traffic in the town of St. Andrews, and I so move.
Okay, seconder for that motion. Got Councillor Heenan again. You guys are consistent. Any discussion on this one? Councillor Neal.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. A question and a comment, I guess. My question regarding the 2 spots adjacent to the hardware store, it's kind of hard to tell from the map, but is that not already designated for hardware customers only?
No.
I believe they had signs on the side of the building at one point.
That was in a previous
2 years ago?
rendition of 2 years ago. They asked for that, and we put them up.
Okay.
But they are actually town spaces, and last year we didn't, and they seemed to rotate okay, turn over all right.
Okay, so, and then my concern, again, is something that Councillor Hurdle touched on, is with the additional enforcement and how the enforcement officers are going to be monitoring that 30 minutes. Is this going to involve the chalking of tires again, which in the past we have received a fair bit of opposition to?
I have to assume that it is the chalking of tires because that's how every municipality does it, unfortunately. And I know people don't touch my tires, right? They're clean, like I can appreciate that, but it's a common practice, unfortunately, for timing.
It's chalk,
Yeah,
washes off.
I think it's going to cause more trouble than it's going to benefit us. Thank you.
So we will call, any more comments on that?
Well, one of the things was that came from the survey we had done with the community, that they're asking for some short-term spaces just to ensure things are being turned over, because as you know, during tourist season, things can get blocked up there for hours as people, park, which is great in visiting the area, going on tour boats, but then people that just want to make a quick trip downtown aren't able to find. So we are just taking a very limited sampling of spaces to make them available for some of the local residents who need quick trips.
Yeah, I don't think, to Councillor Neal's point, I don't think anyone's debating that they're not warranted. It's just how do we enforce it that's problematic. I will say that 2 years ago when there was no parking, when we had those 30-minute parking spots, when I went to go to the hardware store on a Saturday morning, it was the easiest I ever had of getting there. You could just park, grab your stuff and go. They were open a lot because people were coming and going. Councillor Hurdle.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just sort of brainstorming about this and just wondering with the 30-minute marker, if it wouldn't be easier if we extended it to, well, maybe easier, it's not the right thing to do, but 45 minutes instead. I don't know if that would make things, because 30 minutes is a tight time frame to do a couple of errands downtown. If we are monitoring it and, to kind of to Councillor Neal's point, chalking tires and things like that and being pretty, on the money with the 30-minute mark, wouldn't it make more sense to maybe spread the time out a little bit more? But again, could be chasing our own tails on that one, so.
Perfect. It's good suggestion. Councillor Heenan.
Yes, Your Worship. Unless the meter monitor is standing right there when someone pulls in, it's likely that the 30-minute would be probably closer to 45 minutes, because I've seen them park when I've been working downtown, and it's been 20 minutes before they've come and even ticked the tires. So it really boils down to that a 30-minute spot, unless, as I say, they're absolutely right there, is not going to turn into 30 minutes. It's going to be more like 45 or 50 minutes. Thank you, Your Worship.
Any other comments on this one? Otherwise, I'll call the question. Councillor Gumashall?
To throw gas on the fire, since I like to ride a bike, but one of the recommendations of the transportation plan, which certainly we're not at a point to implement right now, was that pay parking be considered for the downtown area. And I realize it's too late to do it this year, probably too late to do it next year, but we did have recommendations out of the transportation plan that we consider making the downtown historic business district a pay parking zone. And if we're going to do some enforcement, then it might be worthwhile to consider doing all the enforcement. But that's for someone on a higher pay grade than me.
Thanks. And, but to your point, though, that could be something that comes up at budget time for sure, and it gets debated, because that will be a larger conversation with the community for sure. But again, another point. Anyone else? Otherwise, I'll call the question again. You can vote for it or against it, or amend it. Councillor Neal?
Yeah, just to Councillor Gumashall's point, I'm just going to throw this out there, but it would be worth just putting this off for a year until we have that discussion regarding paid parking. And perhaps, you know, as much as I honestly do not want to see parking meters in the town of St. Andrews, if we were doing it for 4 spots, it would certainly alleviate the headache of enforcement and the inherent nightmare with chalking tires that I can see coming our way this summer.
So are you, not to put you on the spot, but are you motioning to table this and then bring it up next year as part of a conversation during budget time to potentially put 4 meters in parking spots for people that are willing to have the 30-minute parking?
I will make that motion, sure.
All right, so we motion to table. Do we have a seconder to table that? Seeing no seconder, double checking. Okay, no seconder, so we're back to the original motion. Unless there's anyone else, I will call the question then. All those in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye. Okay, and opposed? So that by a vote of 5-1 has carried. So we are on to the next one.
So the next motion is the council approves the gating of the wharf to vehicular traffic, excluding permitted vehicles, between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m., 7 days a week, from Monday, May 16th, 2022 to Tuesday, September the 6th, 2022, and I so move.
Thank you. A seconder for that motion. Got Councillor Hurdle. Discussion on that one. Councillor Neal.
Just a question regarding the gate. Do we feel that it's absolutely necessary to have the gate there, or would a sign be sufficient? Again, after last year, I'm just commenting again on the aesthetics of that steel gate and how frequently it's being shoved aside for people that are permitted to get down and have to get out and move it back.
How about we compromise and we'll start with the sign, and if that isn't working, we'll bring the gate out.
That suffice? See how it goes? All right. I don't even think that's necessarily a friendly, well, let's say gating. I think we could call that a friendly amendment. Staff discretion, start with the sign, and if it becomes a problem, then implement the gate. Does that work for everybody? Okay, all right, so we'll just keep it as is then. So, any other discussions on this one? Restricting, okay.
To restrict access, well, from gating.
Restrict access of the wharf. There we go. Good. All right, call the question. All those in favor of this motion signify by saying aye. Aye, Your Worship. That's everybody. That has been carried. We are now going on to Councillor Gumashall's portfolio, which is Recreation and Community Service. Discussion on childcare. It's in page 43 of the council package. I don't know, Mr. Knopper is going to lead that, or even Mr. Spear, but I don't.
Well, we'll give this a test to see if Mr. Knopper can get on here. You are on mute. Okay.
Council, can you hear me?
Yep.
Again.
Excellent. Thank you, Council. Apologies for not being there in person tonight. As you're aware, I'm out with COVID, but we'll be back in this week. So before you, you have the Child Needs Survey results. So this was conducted throughout the month of March into the beginning of April. And there were 11 questions asked that highlighted different areas of childcare needs, everything from the number of children that people have to what type of needs and services they are looking for within the program. Just give me 1 second, Council. I'm just having a technical issue here. Just trying to get a document open here. But overall, we had 78 participants within the survey, or sorry, 80 participants within the survey, which was a half decent result for a survey that was sent both by mail and by email to everyone. A quick summary of this. So the comments, there were almost 70% of respondents said they are currently looking for childcare arrangements. When looking at question 2, the biggest times that people were looking for were during the week. There was look for full-time and after-school programming were the 2 major components that came out of that. There were a series of comments that came with that one, but we'll just highlight the main points. Question 3, how many children do you have? The majority of respondents said 2 or 1 children, or child. What were the age ranges? The 2 most predominant ones were toddlers between the ages of 11 months and 36 months, and children in the grade classes of K to 6. One of the biggest questions we asked was, were you satisfied with the current childcare arrangements that you have? Over 70% of the respondents said no. So this is a pretty good determination. So as we went through the questions, next question was, what type of experiences or problems that they've had with childcare services? Cost, finding temporary care, dependable care, quality of care, and scheduling were all the main top points from that section. When observing the next question, which child services they would prefer to be added or included, a lot of proponents highlighted social interactions, activities such as sports or recreation. Healthy food options was there, but also skill learning were key tops for childcare services. There was a range of estimated annual incomes, with the majority ranging for a household between $50,000 and $100,000. And how much people pay for childcare services was quite a range. Some were saying they paid between $50 and $100 a week, with the second largest group also noting that it was between $151 and $200 a week that they pay per child. At question 10, we asked if they don't utilize the services, what's preventing them from? The biggest one was no availability. And Council, you had a series of supporting responses from question 11 that highlighted everything from the need for after-school programming to being on wait lists for programming to needing for summer camps, something definitely more day-oriented that fits between the ages of 6 and 12. Overall, Council, I think you've been provided with a good series of information here to review and to work with when it comes to childcare needs within your community.
Thank you very much, Mr. Knopper, for that quick summary. I will say that having some data to back up conversations always makes it more valid when you're trying to find solutions and show the case. And I would actually say that although technically you wouldn't think that this would be something a municipality looks at or addresses, I would say the reality is St. Andrews has been very lucky to be one of the fastest growing communities in New Brunswick when you look at population increase. I won't say that we're the only one, because I think pretty much if you go in almost every community in New Brunswick right now, you're going to hear a very similar story, that it's hard to find childcare. But if we want people to come and move here, that's step one, but the second thing is to retain them. So to say that we don't have a role to play in figuring this out, I think that would be very short-sighted, and I think staff shares that same views and other members of council that have talked to me about it. So I don't necessarily have a specific action. We've had some great conversations over where could be a secondary location, for example, for after school. And, you know, we've talked about the youth center, but then there's a group of students that are going to the youth center after school already. So you'd be almost somewhat pushing some of them out the door because you can only have certain ages at certain times there. You know, we talk about, you know, even the dining room here of making it some type of a thing, but then you've got exercises groups that you'd be pushing out. So there's, you know, we looked at the Dragonfly Center, Councillor Gumashell, Mr. Spear and I went and walked through it to see what that looks like. And they don't actually heat it during the winter. So, you know, you're going to have significant costs when people are already talking about the cost of childcare. But the reality is every community in New Brunswick, you would hear the same challenge that the cost of childcare is high, right? Like it's, so I don't think this is a unique St. Andrews challenge, but it would be great if there was some way this council and staff could at least either foster or help come up with a solution to improve it. And the problem is we're looking at next school year in theory right now, and we're already getting tight because of the amount of inspections and check the boxes and regulations that are required by the province. So if anyone has a good idea out in the community, or anyone that ever wanted to look at starting their own childcare business, there is limitations to what you can have based. One thing that's very evident out of the survey is that there is a lot of demand for that business. So unless someone has a specific follow-up on that, I don't right now, other than I'd like to sit down with the principal of Vincent Massey Elementary School, the Passamaquoddy Children's Center, and see. I do think that the Passamaquoddy Children's Center has interest in expanding. It's just that their facility, unfortunately, is at the max of what it can be. So if there was another venue that we could figure out for it, I think you might actually have an opportunity down the road in a few months with the proper approvals. And it's also important to note that the municipality wants to get involved. The space that you're thinking of probably needs to be retrofitted in some way with washrooms and certain regulations, as it is quite regulated for good reason, but also you got to look at it and shake your head because right now the alternative is nothing. So it's a tough one for sure. But I'm really glad that we have that. Does anyone have anything they want to add on that, or Councillor Heenan?
Yes, Your Worship. This just comes to mind as we're discussing it, so I'm just pulling it off the top of my head. But have we ever considered, like we do with the developers, to come up with a plan, a call, to have someone come in and build a child care center and run it? I.e., like we give, I'm just hypothetically saying, we give them the space, we give them the property. Because you talk, Your Worship, about retrofitting, and we all know that sometimes it's easier to build new than it is to retrofit something. It's easier to build something brand new with all the recommendations in place at the time than it is to find something old and try to retrofit, try to make it wheelchair accessible, et cetera, et cetera. But if something was built, like a contractor would come in and build something and run it, if we gave support, just hypothetically, it might be an idea to look into.
Thank you, Councillor. Is
Thank
it
you.
safe to say, Mr. Spear, though, that most of these childcare facilities are not-for-profit organizations because I hate to say it, although it costs a lot, they have ratios of I call them teachers, but supervision to children, and it's probably not financially lucrative to get into this particular business. Is that safe to assume?
That would be safe to assume, Your Worship, that in order for them to be successful, in order to maintain cost, to keep at a level that people can afford them, they'd have to have other partners. And for a developer to make enough money to have just a daycare in it probably wouldn't be feasible, to be honest. It's something we can explore, but I'd question if it could be done.
To that point, and I'll go to Councillor Hurdle in one moment, though, but just a reminder that the Passamaquoddy Lodge's plans actually was for space for another childcare facility, and if that ever did happen, then you would actually have that place plus the older facility potentially to make an investment in, and that might be a way there where we rise. But currently, right now, that is the last update I have is there's been no progress on that file. So, Councillor Hurlin, we'll go to Councillor Blanchard.
You spoke right to my point right there, is that if I remember thinking back with the original plans, the Passamaquoddy Lodge had that, and if that's the way we get it back on the table, I think that there's multiple studies that show health benefits for having those combinations together that could benefit the community. So if we could help that happen, I think that would be in our best interest.
That's a good point. We should make sure the survey is available to that group as well for when they're talking with the province, for sure. That's a good suggestion. Councillor Blanchard.
Thank you, Worship. So just with the recently, fairly recently, the province of New Brunswick signed on to the with the federal government for the child care. I think it was $10 a day daycare or something like that. I think we were one of the last provinces. There might be one more still to go, but we were one of the last provinces to sign on. I'm just wondering, with that discussion, and I know it's a phased-in approach, it's going to take several years, are there any conversations with municipalities or communities, or is it just simply provincial government speaking to, like I said, private daycare owners or the nonprofit groups themselves? Or, like I said, is there engagement with the communities in terms of how and where those spaces will be created? And this is why I know, as we were speaking, the survey came out, we really have very little to do with childcare as a municipality, but with that recent announcement, potentially increases in funding, is there an opportunity for a conversation to perhaps to what Councillor Heenan's suggestion was, if there are opportunities and funding available, maybe that municipality could become a little more engaged in developing new spaces if there's additional funding?
Mr. Spear might be able to comment. There's been nothing that I'm aware of that's been cascaded down yet. I will say that I have heard in the media of some operators saying that in order to have the $10 daycare, you can only charge this much. And it actually is putting their business at a model where it actually is not financially viable. So it'll be interesting to see, and I believe the $10 daycare is an option. You don't have to do it. It'll be interesting to see when this does come out, how many actually can do the $10 versus the, I can't afford to do it because I still get, whatever that dollar number is that you have to charge, that the province subsidizes. So there's a lot we need to figure out, but to your point is, it's obviously something that they're looking at rolling out a new program. So hopefully there's some type of opportunity for us, because to say that figuring out childcare for a municipality, it should be up to us ourselves. We know that it shouldn't be up to us ourselves. But I guess we're trying to be a little proactive here, and we should be looking for that, to your point. Go ahead again, and then I'll go to Mr. Spear.
And yeah, and just like I said, with, where we've done this survey, it's additional information. I know you said it's good to have that in your back pocket, but perhaps, again, we could even forward this up to the province so they're aware of the situation in our community. Not that they're not aware that all communities are suffering through this or are challenged with this, but it's never a bad thing just to put it out there. And like I said, maybe that will stimulate a conversation with the province in terms of future developments or something like that. Because it's not just about affordable childcare; it's also about creating new spaces. That's part of the program as well, right? So
Absolutely.
That might be an opportunity.
We should forward this to the minister and copy MLA Kathy Bacchus as well, and for the sake of it, MP Williamson as well. Mr. Spear, you had something to add?
Well, kind of to follow up with Councillor Gumachel's earlier comment, the times are changing. Locally, when thinking of St. Stephen and St. George, they've partnered with third-party providers that provided like after-school programs, not so much earlier, which we could explore. But again, even though they're being stretched to their resources, so like a lot of things these days, we have to come up with our own initiative in order to make it successful at St. Andrews.
That's a good point. I do know Sunbury Shores is looking at potentially getting something on the go as well, which will, again, every 12 students that decide to do that, it's 12 more, students that have a place to go after school. So I think we have a lot more to do on that one, but it was a good conversation. But you can see that some of these challenges are not ones that you can make it with a quick motion and move on. We're going to have to stay on top of that one, and of course leverage some of the people that are in this profession on what they think are opportunities as well. So unless anyone else anything to add, I will move on to the discussion of the mowing of Sir James Dunn Academy Field, which is 64. We have a staff report. Mr. Spears, anything you want to add, and then we'll go to council on that one?
Well, I guess just nothing more to add, Your Worship, just to we've had a request to mow the field again for the summer, and I guess staff's position, council's in the past position was we'd give them a help for a couple of seasons as they've tried to redevelop that field. But there is minimal public use of that field outside of the school during the summer from what we can see, so we're not sure why it's any benefit to the town, being the taxpayers, to maintain that field. But
Perfect. So, sorry, go ahead. Is there more? No? Okay, so basically it comes down to it's for people that have not been part of this debate before, is the field is technically owned by the province of New Brunswick. The municipality has been mowing it for a few years. I will say that Councillor Gumachel's been a big reason why that field even has grass right now. It was a hard dirt pit, I think at one point is what it was. Maybe I'm being a little harsh, but there wasn't much there. And as well, the trees were falling over on the fence. It's really a sad state, to be completely honest. So Councillor Gumashall and a number of sponsors in the community, I don't want to say any because I'll forget some, but a number of people contribute in the community. The idea would be to have a high school that has a good field and locally take some responsibility. Councillor Gumashall, is there anything you want to add on that one before I get some consensus on staff?
Yeah,
on
I
council?
could, thank you. I could start the timer again and speak extensively.
Start the
but
timer.
Just to be brief is to say that I do. Clearly, the residents of the town of St. Andrews take a great deal of pride in their community. You can see that in the yards all over town, up and down King Street. The grass is and the trees and the lawns are all meticulous and part of that community pride. We were not seeing extended to that field. It needed a little bit of love. And rather than, kind of pointing the finger and saying, you're not taking care of that the way you ought to be, some people stepped up. And it snowballed, and we were able to put in a field there that I think everybody can be proud of, including the students at the school. However, the staff there don't have proper gear to mow that the way it needs to be. They got an old lawn boy ride on that's not the best piece of gear, and so for the 2 hours a week that staff has said it would take to mow the field, I think that's a good investment of time in having a field that we can be proud of, and that people we want to move to our community, whether it's doctors or whoever we want to come to town, we can say, here's our beautiful school, and here's a nice field right beside it. It's not a dog park. It's not full of rocks. It's a place where kids can play, and it's also in the community versus the Harry Mallory, which is a bit out of sight. It's still in the community, but it's a bit of out of sight for people to send young kids to. So I'll stop there. I can keep talking if you want, but
No, that's I appreciate that. I'll open up to other members of council, and then I'm going to get some consensus. Councillor Hurdle.
Thank you, Your Worship. Have we ever approached the Department of Education to take it off their hands?
in an ideal world, that would work. That would be great, because they're dealing. So we're now amalgamated with St. John. They've got schools up there that are falling down, and We don't necessarily make the top of the list, and those guys have a hard job. I'm not pointing any fingers, but one of the outcomes of this exercise was to get the head of maintenance for the school district and town staff in the same room and sit down, and we were able to build some relationships there. So they threw in I have the whole budget here. We were almost up to 30 grand, 5 of which came from the town, but that's money that kind of just appeared from nowhere. I'm happy to hand this around. And just kind of people getting excited about, that field should be fixed up. And I could get into the whole history of it that I have in the past, but anyway. So taking it off their hands, that might be a solution for sure. Certainly, this area of the this area of Charlotte County needs a turf field at some point, and if we don't maintain some interest in the field that's there, like that'd be the obvious spot to have a turf field. You could have a 3-season field. You could play tennis on it, for example, if it was turfed. You could play lacrosse. Lots of different things beyond just soccer. So it just shows interest and community pride, and a sense that we're in the sports game, not just the other communities nearby.
Perfect. And just to add on to that, I don't think that this is, again, a challenge that's unique to St. Andrews. I know that a neighboring municipality had quite a back and forth, as they used to have a service contract with the province to look after the field, where they actually got a little bit of compensation from the province to look after it. I think it got into the dollars and cents and no longer made sense for the municipality to do it. And I know that there's stories of youth in that community going to play baseball and the lines weren't painted and stuff like It's a tough one.
So they got into a fight over there, whereas we were able to sit down and come up with a solution. So I think we're on the right track. Maybe someday taking it over, I don't know. But in the meantime, we have a perfectly good field that we only have to put 2 hours a week into. And Mr. Lister is going to continue to bring his expertise as an old farmer. And we'll get that field back up and going for 2 hours a week. So
just to
$40 a week.
Just to clarify, if a bunch of youth in our community want to go kick a soccer ball there in the summer, they can help themselves do it.
The field is open for recreation.
Perfect. Councillor Heenan.
Yes, Your Worship and Council. I understand Councillor Gumachel's passion for this field, and I personally saw him working diligently for a whole summer fixing it. I understand that we've just gone through COVID, so it has limited the amount of sports that has happened in St. Andrews and everywhere else. However, recently, I walk around there a lot, and I never see anybody. I've only seen 2 girls on that field playing, like, practice soccer one night that I've been around, and I don't know how much it's utilized. If I was going to do anything, I would support it for 1 more year, but then we have to have a solution, because, I mean, unless it gets viable use, I don't know. I just find it hard to pay that. Anyway, that's just my thoughts.
I think the challenge that we're having is we all want to see it be a vital and well-maintained field in the community, but it's, the province of New Brunswick has a lot more tax dollars than the town of St. Andrews, and that's what the fundamental issue is here of the conversation, is not that we don't value the field, it's just the province should be paying to keep care of it. But in the same sense, to Councillor Gumachel's, if we have that attitude, then it's going to fall, the current way it is now, it's going to fall apart again. Councillor Hurdle. Oh, sorry, I think I favor the left. It must be my better.
Are you left-handed?
Must be, mobility's limited both ways, but it must be better this way. Councillor Blanchard.
Like I said, I think, Your Worship, I think you kind of said it. We certainly value the field, but I don't like to see the province continually offloading their responsibilities and what should be their, their time, their resources onto municipalities. That's a concern. However, the question I did want to ask Councillor Gumachel, if I could, was in those discussions with the province. I'm happy that the conversations were positive, and it turned out that they were able to contribute to rejuvenating the field. Were there any discussions about ongoing maintenance, within those same conversations?
So, Your Worship,
Absolutely.
and the CAO has been in on discussions. I think part of the movement might go towards the Regional Service Commission having some sort of a field management team, with professionals in that area come around. Certainly, we're being amalgamated with St. John through the school district isn't necessarily ideal. And when you looked at when you go through the some of the recreation papers, that field is listed as a provincial recreation asset. So ideally, it would be a provincial thing, but as far as those guys were concerned, it's open. What's the problem? It's a field, and they were good guys, but if you want it better, go fix it. So that's what we did. Mm-hmm. Again, it's 2 hours. And I'll take Councillor Heenan's, if it's not used this year, then we won't do it next year. How's that? I'd take that, so.
Okay. You're good, Councillor
Just to follow up,
Yep, absolutely.
I guess I could support it for 1 more year, except understanding that there are some changes being made, amalgamations, well, as part of the whole restructuring here, and changes at the Regional Service Commission as well. And I know recreation and things are supposed to be a shared service or whatever it is through the region. So perhaps something like this could come up through that. I still see it as sort of maybe offloading because some of the responsibilities, because we are funding a good chunk of that. We're still unclear as to where some of the money for the Regional Service Commission is coming from, and it does sound like the municipalities may be on the hook for some of these things. So, until that gets sorted out, I would support for another year, and then perhaps it gets rolled in or discussed at that level.
The municipal reform and the changes at the Regional Service Commission is a good point, actually, as more provincial responsibilities are going to be cascaded down. That is a valid point, what that could potentially look like. Councillor Hurdle.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to suggest a compromise, actually, because in my mind, when I think about walking by the field, the signage that's up, and I'm just going by memory right now, is somewhat prohibitive. I think I remember seeing a closed sign often there, or obviously there's a no dogs allowed sign, but I don't remember there ever being like an open sign. And if we do have the opportunity to use it publicly in the summertime, if we are going to be mowing the lawn and being able to use it, it's just possible we have a sign that says open to the public throughout the summertime while we're maintaining it. If we can compromise on that, I'd be absolutely in support of it. I know a sign costs money, obviously, but
I think that's reasonable though, and if there's a concern over that going up, then about liability or whatever, that's not a good sign for us why we're funding it.
While we're funding it,
So
right,
that's a valid comment, absolutely. Anyone else got anything? Councillor Heenan, I know you.
Just one more remark. When we talked about a road, if you plow it, you own it. It's like we talked about fixing at the end of going over to Minister's Island, and we said, well, if we graded it, then we take it that it shows we own it. Well, if we mow it, do we own it?
We're good there, and if we
Okay,
ever did get that
thank
much
you.
green space, that might be good, right? So, Mr. Spear, I don't want to.
No, just real quick, Your Worship. I guess to address other councillors' concerns about usage, let's remember we'll be having a rec director hired this year, and that's
Valid point.
just like any other asset in the town. And to Councillor Gumachel's, it's more central. So if we could have stuff like, I don't know, that frisbee football looks pretty fun to me. So something like that could be utilized. And I think there's lots of opportunity where it is a little more central than the Harry Mallory.
That's a valid point that if our fitness, if our rec director rather can utilize the field in a way, that's a good opportunity. And the other thing is when the rec director's hired, it would be good, maybe Mr. Spear, for yourself and myself to sit down with the school or the province and discuss a longer term solution where maybe there's a little bit of compensation to help, because there is a budget for it, I'm sure, where maybe there's a compromise where everybody can move ahead forward. So no matter what I'm getting is if you approve this motion, it's for 1 year, and the expectation is that we talk about a sign to make it accessible for all. And then as well, Mr. Spear and I, at the very least, should have a follow-up conversation with the province about what next year could look like, or even this year if they can somehow, even though we're willing to raise our hands, if you pass that, then it doesn't mean that there's not an opportunity for a partnership to come back and update you on as well, right? So with that, we did talk about that one at length. I will look to call the question then. Sorry, I don't have to call the question. I guess we're giving staff direction. I'll be looking for consensus to maintain with those provisions I just talked about for the field for the 2022 season. So just a quick show of hands, those that agree to support it. That's everybody. So long talk at the end. We all ended up the same spot. So there's some work to do, but we'll continue to support Sir James Dunn Academy Field with mowing. The next one should be a little easier, Councillor Gumashel.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And reference number RCS 220407, submitted by myself, and the subject is the 42nd edition of the St. Andrews Father's Day Race Road Closure Request. And the background reads, I'll go quickly. The town of St. Andrews has received a request from the St. Andrews Father's Day Race Committee regarding a race closure for Saturday, June 18, 2022 for the 42nd edition of the St. Andrews Father's Day Road Race. This race is a 5-mile road race that is open to youth, adults, and seniors. Starting in 1979, the race is run every year except for 2020 and 2021 due to COVID-19. Proceeds from the race go back into the community to support local athletes under the umbrella of Charlotte County Track Club, supporting Sir James Dunn Academy cross-country team, and travel sponsorship for local athletes and coaches. The road closure request is for Princess Royal Street from the Algonquin to Augustus Street from 9:15 a.m. to 11 a.m. It is recommended the road be closed from 8:30 a.m. to 12 p.m. to allow for setup and tear down of the event. And the motion reads, that council approves the road closure of Princess Royal Street from the Algonquin Hotel to Augustus Street on Saturday, June 18th, I think that should be Sunday, from 8:30 a.m. till 12 p.m. for the 42nd edition of the St. Andrews Father's Day Road Race. I think it's a Sunday, is not a Saturday.
June 19th, 2022.
Okay,
So Sunday.
thank you, Siri.
Okay, a seconder for that motion that's read with Sunday in it. I've got Councillor, I'm going to go to the right because I favor the left. Councillor Blanchard.
I think all three of us had our hands up.
Okay. We'll switch next time. I seriously, I do favor, I looked there first. Okay, so seconded by Counselor Blanchard. Unless there's any debate on this one, not seeing any, I can't anticipate. All right, all those in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. That's looking to the right here. Is that everybody to the right? Perfect. So that has been carried, and I will say that after being canceled for 2 years due to COVID, it's really great to see that St. Andrew's tradition up and going. And I know it's a lot of work for the volunteers, but personally, on my own account, it's part of my Father's Day, so it's good to see it continue. We did already discuss briefly the skateboard, scooters, and inline skates, and we also already looked at the Van Horn Garden Home. So I believe we're through the agenda for this evening. I know we've page 101.
Me again.
Oh, sorry, you're right. Not that I'm disappointed. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. This is reference number PED 220302. Zoning Bylaw Z22-01, second reading. The Town of St. Andrews passed the zoning bylaw Z21-01 in March of 2021. Over the past year, staff have been working with the bylaw and have identified several changes to enhance the bylaw and encourage development in the community. The following processes have been taken regarding zoning bylaw 22-01. Bullet 1. Council has had 2 workshops to discuss the proposed changes with staff. First reading of zoning bylaw Z22-01, March 7th, 2022. Obtained views of the Planning Advisory Committee, March 16th, 2022. Public hearing of objections on April 4th, 2022. From the views of PAC and public hearing of objections, the only concern from these meetings was the movement of parking spaces from 1.25 spaces per unit to 1 space per unit. All other amendments to bylaw have had no additional comments regarding accessory dwelling units, townhouses standards, and multiple residential 2 standards. The motion is, Your Worship, that Council grants leave for second reading to zoning bylaw Z22-01, being the zoning bylaw for the Town of St. Andrews, and I so move.
Thank you very much. A seconder for that motion. Counselor Gumashell. We'll open it up for debate, and I guess not that you can't bring any of it forward, but I do think we need to speak to the change of 1.25 to 1, simply for the fact that we did receive a petition, not that you have to necessarily go back on that, but it was regarding the downtown, and as well our PAC also had some concerns over that particular angle. Everything else, I think, for the most part, they were in support of. So I don't know if anyone wanted to bring up anything on that this evening, but I think that seems to be the focus of where it is. I haven't personally heard a whole lot about any of the other changes myself. I don't know if anyone else has. So anyone have anything that they want to bring forward on that at this time, or does everyone feel good to go to second reading? Look to the right.
In what sense? At 1.25 or at 1?
It'd be 1.25 right now is the way that it's worded. Okay? Or sorry, rather, my mistake. It's at 1. It's the change to 1 right now.
1 in the town environs.
Correct.
Town plat, and then 1.25 outside the plat.
Yeah.
So if I could, Your Worship, I've gone back and forth on this several times, looking at, I guess, both sides of it. At the end of the day, I think I agree with the recommendations that we received from PAC. I think the initial thought was, again, that we were going to be reducing traffic in town, and honestly, my feeling is we're going to have the exact opposite effect. Not so much with regards to traffic, but with regards to parking. I think reducing it down to 1 space per dwelling unit is just going to compound an already complicated parking issue within the downtown area. Ideally, people moving into some of these units, would be working within walking distance, but I don't think that's always going to be the case. And I don't see the reduction in parking spaces convincing anybody to sell a vehicle. And as a result, I think we're just going to be sending those vehicles out onto the streets to find other parking. And I think it's just going to have the result of compounding our already problematic parking within the downtown core.
Thank you, Councillor Neal, for that. I will say, to add on, I know I'm allowed to speak, thanks to your guys' flexibility with the procedural bylaw, but I think that the spirit that council has is the right spirit. But I think in order to make that change, you need to put the infrastructure with it. If you had a parking lot that you acquired in downtown that could be used where people could park over the winter, for example, or something like that, it gives the flexibility, but we're in a community that has no public transportation. We have no public transportation. If you could imagine living, all of us, in this community without a car, how difficult that would be to be connected to the rest of the world. You need to go to a doctor's appointment. You know, you need to go to the hospital. You need to go get something that's not available at our stores in town. It's a very tough community. And I will say that if it was affordable housing that was being built, you might be able to get away with one. But in our downtown, those are going to be water views. They're going to be high end. They're going to be people of probably more income of all reality because they're going to have a beautiful view and they're going to be higher end. So I just, myself, just to echo Councillor Neal's comments, I think that it's someplace we can get to. I just think that we need to have better almost support in place to allow it with their downtown because parking is limited and in today's society, I know we want to have less vehicles, but I actually have not seen any trend that people are getting less of anything. It seems like people are keeping up with the Joneses more and more every day and having two cars versus one. So I share similar concerns. And other than that, everything that's gone through on that, I've actually been very supportive of and think that it's good moves for our community. And again, I know I want more higher density housing, but I can't have it both ways. And the big thing I'll say about the downtown is I'm not one for bylaws. I said that when I was running, but I really think when it comes to downtown St. Andrews, that's where we should really get it right. That is our bread and butter. And not that other streets aren't important in town, but if you change something, you don't notice as much as if you notice it when you change downtown. Whenever there's something that goes up in the town of St. Andrews, downtown, that's where the whole community gives feedback is the downtown. So if we're going to change the downtown, I just say that we do it in a way that doesn't complicate or take away from the way that it feels today. So that's just all my comments that I wanted to add on to Councillor Neal. So I'll open up to anyone else. Councillor Heenan.
Yes, Your Worship and Council. I've done a lot of looking at this, and because I've been on the PAC, and of course I'm totally opposite to what PAC has recommended, because I look at a 4-unit apartment building being built downtown, and the difference is 4 units. One is 4 cars. 1.25, it's 5 cars. That still does not accommodate people having 2 cars each unit. I mean, a 0.25 does not allow anything other than confusion, because then you get a building that has 4 units in it with 5 spots. How do you debate who gets that 5th spot? It's not feasible to not, if you're going to do this on a 2 cars per unit, then it should be 10. Like this 1.25, a 0.25 on a 4-unit building is 1 parking spot. And that's not going to do anything for the other 3 units in that whole building. I'm sorry, but it's not. You say people are getting more. Well, if those 4 units each have 2 cars, that's 8 units and you got 5 spots. Doesn't work.
I think the spirit of the 0.25 is for visitor parking. When you have, if 4 people have a spot, there's a good chance that in the winter that one of them on a weekend could have somebody over. It gives just, generally you'll see 1 per person and the other one's like a visitor parking is what the spirit of it is in a lot of these multi-residential parking developments. So, but point taken.
I just, as I said.
You're saying 1 or 2 is really
I'm
not
saying
0.25.
it doesn't matter. Like, it just doesn't matter. And if you have, what if you have 4 people who have 4 visitors? It's still not going to change the thing. There's going to just be controversy over who's going to get that 5th spot. And I just don't see it viable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blanchard.
Yeah, excuse me, thank you, Your Worship. I agree with Councillor Heenan. Like I said, the idea that this is reducing or limiting, like I said, people who might potentially have 2 vehicles, it really isn't about that, because currently as it is 1.25, you are getting 1 per unit. The extra spot is really for visitor parking. This, I do agree with you that we live in a municipality where it is difficult because we are still relatively rural. We don't have all the services that we need. People still do rely on vehicles. However, recognizing we don't have a public transportation system out here, I think it's sorely needed. We do have some models that are coming forward, like in the ride-sharing program, the electric vehicle sharing model that's being put forward, and then it's I believe, are we in place now? I think the vehicle, no, not quite there yet.
No. Insurance concerns currently.
So hopefully that will come. So things are on the horizon. I mean, we still do have the dial-a-ride around as well, so people can access vehicles if they do need them. But I recognize that people still need something. But I think we also need more ride-sharing programs and other options, other services available for people who can just be in the downtown, especially, like I said, retired folks, they may not need those two vehicles, right? Like I said, they may be high-end, but they're here most of the time, and they may only need to travel periodically, so, when someone's not working. So I think the model works. What it does by restricting it down that 1.25 to 1, I think it allows for additional development in the downtown. There isn't the space, so if you are requiring that extra 5th parking spot, it is a little bit more space on that lot that is required in order to squeeze something in. This does allow for a development, essentially the same size, potentially the same number of units, but you're going to be able to squeeze it into a footprint where you don't have to have that other additional parking space, which again, it's not going to prevent someone from having 2 cars because you're only getting one anyways as it stands right now. It's just that one additional space for visitor parking or what have you. I do agree though, we still do need a place for overnight parking, winter parking. We need some place where people can park. I've talked about this we've talked about this previously. I don't think it's right that the winter parking ban, I think that is unfair for current residents downtown where they do not have a place to put vehicles downtown. I think we still need some place, as much as I want to restrict and limit and reduce the number of vehicles that we have, we need to have some infrastructure in place to assist people. I think we are lacking there. I think there is a lacking of overnight and especially in the wintertime parking spaces. So I do think we need to look at that, but I don't think going from 1.25 to 1 really impacts vehicles that much. I think it just allows for development in the downtown, which may not be available if you have to squeeze in the extra parking space. I think that's really where it is for me.
And just to add on, it gives the opportunity to build higher because they're small footprints and it's the difference between them putting a 3rd floor or a 2nd floor on. That's in a lot of cases what it will come down to because a 3rd floor, the extra units, they can't fit on the parcel. You put the 3rd floor in, they can get more parking spots or they can go higher. So as long as we're aware of the spin-off effect of that is where I'm going as well, right? So Councillor Neal.
I don't disagree with the points made by Councillor Heenan and Councillor Blanchard. But again, if we're all in agreement that 4 parking spots for 4 units is not enough, then I don't think the solution is to take away the 5th one. That again seems counterintuitive to me. You're just adding to the problem. I mean, we all agree that it's not enough parking. So why would we limit it even more? I mean, we're stuck with the starting point of the 125 because that's where it is. So again, I don't see the point of taking away that extra space, especially when we all agree that it's not enough parking. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hurdle, do one more round for everybody and then we'll call the question.
Thank you, Worship. Sorry, Councillor, I just want to say we don't all agree that more parking is required, that 1.25 still isn't enough. I've shared my views on this before, and my belief is that we have limited space, and my feeling is that I would always rather have a person, a family, a living space over a parking space in this community, and that's essentially what it comes down to in my mind. Having that extra space potentially for a visitor takes it away from a family, and sure, I mean, right now, if we look at the things that we're afraid of, which is more parking on the street, I think the reality doesn't really necessarily paint that bleak a picture. Even if for a couple of years there is an increased footprint of parking on the street, we see from other municipalities that when parking minimums are dropped, that does not actually happen. Many communities have gotten rid of parking minimums because they are looking for alternatives in their communities and trying to inspire alternatives in their communities. And you don't get alternatives in the community if you endorse the status quo, unfortunately. And I understand where the concerns are coming from, and I think that this is one of those weird situations where we're all right. Everybody is correct in this issue to a point. But if we want to look forward, and if we want to envision a community that is different and that doesn't give over public space to parking and rather gives over space to housing and people, I would rather be on that side of the argument, and that's what I have to say.
Perfect, thank you. Anyone else? I know we've gone. Councilor Gubishal?
Thank you, Worship. Xander's on this call. I just was going to ask him, earlier in this discussion, a few meetings back, it came up that I think in Sackville, a community, or in Sackville, a development was passed with no parking, and I was wondering if you could speak to that and how they were able to do that.
Thank you, Councilor Gumashell, and I just have to say this is a really good debate. I'm really enjoying it. It's great points on both sides, even though obviously I made a recommendation to go one way. It was Antigonish in Nova Scotia for a micro suite project, so smaller units, and to be fair, much less likely that you'd have two people living there, because I don't think any was bigger than 600 square feet, although I'm sure there were still some families there. And I think there were 37 units, and the municipality allowed it to go ahead with 7 parking spots. And that's really, I can't say if that's worked, if, there's all sorts of traffic problems now. But from what I've heard, it hasn't caused any issues.
Thank you, Xander.
Thank you. Anything else, Councilor Gubishal?
No, that's it, thanks.
Did you, Councilor Heenan?
Yes, Your Worship, as you know, I feel passionate about this, but if people know from the get-go when they're renting a spot that they're only allowed 1 parking spot per unit, they have the perfect choice of going on and finding a spot somewhere else to live. That becomes a condition. That becomes part and parcel of the condition. It says you're only allowed 1 parking spot, that's it. And if you don't agree with that, like they do in Toronto, you get an apartment with 1 parking spot. If you don't agree with that, you move to the suburbs. You don't stay downtown Toronto. And I really think that we as a council are responsible as well to up our tax base, not in parking lots, but in places to live. A parking spot does not pay taxes. A building does, and an apartment does, and it also puts more people in the downtown core, which is what our goal as a council should be, to be feasibly responsible to the citizens of St. Andrews and bring people into the shops of St. Andrews, to shop local. And as I say, you up the front, you say, I'm sorry, you have a choice to rent here or not. You get 1 spot. And as we discussed previously, this does not mean that someone that has the availability to add more spots can't do it. So if the spot that they're asking to build on happens to have places for 6 spots, go for it. We're just giving it a minimum. Like, if some developer, if I want to build downtown and I have room for 8 parking spots, go for it. You get the 8 spots, but we're just giving it a minimum here. We're not cutting in the ropes that they can't have 2 per unit if there's the space allows it. This just allows for us to give a minimum. And as I say, if you look at a 4 unit, it's 1 more parking spot. That's not feasible. That means that someone can't build on a spot to bring the town revenue in of $20,000 or $30,000 taxes because we haven't given them a minimum parking spot. And I think we have a financial responsibility to the town to allow the town to prosper, not go backwards. My thoughts. Thank you, Your
Councilor
Worship.
Heenan. Any new points? Otherwise, I will call the question. I don't think anyone's changing their view, guys. I think it's time maybe. Councilor Hurdle, go ahead.
Sorry, thank you, Your Worship, for indulging me. Just one final point, because we all sat just above here last year and talked about what council's priorities were, and we did say that housing was a priority for this community. We did not talk about parking being a priority for this community. And so my decision and why I'm fighting so passionately for this is that it does prioritize housing over parking. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor of going to second reading, please signify by saying aye. You as well, Councillor Neal? Okay, perfect. That's perfect. So that's unanimous. So we will go to second reading. Part of me is hoping to table it so I didn't have to go to second reading because I'll have to read it by title again. And I apologize. Everybody bear with me. So here we go. Let me actually first I'll jump over. So this is the Town of St. Andrews zoning bylaw number Z22-01. I'll read it by title. Number 1, title and scope. 1.1, definitions. 2.0, administration and interpretive clauses. 2.1, zoning classifications. 2.2, powers of the town council. 2.3, special powers of the Planning Advisory Committee and Regional Service Commission. 2.4, licenses, permits, and compliance with other bylaws. 2.5, which is metric measurements. 2.6, zone boundaries. 2.7, zoning bylaw amendments. 2.8, uses permitted. 2.9, interpretation. 2.10, images. 2.11, the use of italics and underlying. 2.12, development permits and fees. 3.0, general provisions. 3.1, permitted uses and requirements. 3.2, number of buildings on a lot. 3.3, existing undersized lots. 3.4, existing buildings. 3.5, non-conforming uses. 3.6, uses permitted in all zones. 3.7, uses prohibited in all zones. 3.8, utilities infrastructure. 3.9, access to lots. 3.10, mixed uses. 3.11, reduced frontage on a curve. 3.12, line of vision at an intersection. 3.13, accessory buildings or structures erected prior to main building. 3.14, height exemptions. 3.15, prohibition regarding yards and other open space. 3.16, building and structure projections, permitted encroachments. 3.17, enclosures for swimming pools. 3.18, power lines over swimming pool. 3.19, finished floor above grade. 3.20, garbage storage. 3.21, fences. 3.22, exterior lighting or illumination devices. 3.23, change a lot by infilling or excavation. 3.24, keeping of livestock and chickens. 3.25, queuing spaces. 3.26, car and bicycle parking requirements. 3.27, parking lot and driving requirements. 3.28, loading standards. 3.29, mobile vending facilities. 3.30, landscape buffers and landscaped areas. 3.31, setback from ordinary high watermark. 3.32, development within the town plat and environs and historic business district. 3.33, licensed premises. 3.34, short-term rentals. 3.35, protection from deer, our favorite. 3.36, windows in the historic business district. 4.1, general provisions for all residential zones. 4.1.1, requirements for row house dwellings. 4.1.2, private garages and carports. 4.1.3, uses prohibited in certain yards. 4.1.4, landscaping. 4.1.5, residential development near a lagoon or treatment plant. 4.1.6, portable or temporary garages. 4.1.7, accessory uses, buildings and structures in a residential zone. 4.1.8, home daycares. 4.1.9, home-based businesses. 4.1.10, bed and breakfast. 4.1.11, boarding houses. 4.1.12, group homes. 4.1.13, standards for apartment dwellings, senior citizens housing, and residential care facilities. 4.114, amenity space requirements for apartment dwellings, senior citizens housing, and residential care facilities. 4.115, requirements for two-family dwellings, triplexes, and converted dwellings. 4.2.1, SR zone permitted uses. 4.2.2, SR zone uses subject to terms and conditions. 4.2.3, SR zone standards. 4.24, accessory building heights. 4.25, use of front yards. 4.26, minimum ground floor area. 4.3.1, SRC zone permitted uses. 4.3.2, application of SR zone and SRC zone. 4.4.1, ER zone permitted uses. 4.4.2, ER zone uses subject to terms and conditions. 4.4.3, ER zone standards. 4.4.4, accessory building height. 4.4.5, 4.5, use of front yards, 4.4.6, minimum ground floor area, 4.5.1, MR zone permitted uses, 4.5.2, converted dwelling units, 4.5.3, MR zone standards, 4.5.4, accessory building height, 4.5.5, use of front yards, 4.5.6, minimum floor area, 4.6.1, permitted uses, 4.6.2, MR2 zone standards, 4.6.3, accessory building height, 4.6.4, use of front yards, 4.6.5, minimum floor area, 5.1.1, commercial landscaping screening requirements, 5.1.2, accessory buildings and structures in commercial zones, 5.1.3, special requirements for auto-oriented uses and gas bars, 5.2.1, CC zone permitted uses, 5.2.2, CC zone uses, subject to terms and conditions, 5.2.3, CC zone requirements, 5.2.4, use of front yards, 6.1.1, institutional zone permitted uses, 6.1.2, institutional zone uses subject to terms and conditions, 6.1.3, institutional zone requirements, 6.1.4, screening, 7.0, environmental and recreation zones, 7.1, green space zone, 7.1.1, green space zone permitted uses, 7.1.2, development standards, 7.2, environmental significant area zone, 7.2.1, environmental significant area zone permitted uses, 7.2.2, development standards, 7.3, Navy Island zone, 7.3.1, Navy Island zone permitted uses, 7.3.2, Navy Island zone standards, 7.3.3, use of front yards, 7.3.4, maximum floor area, 7.3.5, trees, 7.3.6, garbage removal, 7.3.7, services, 7.3.8, environmental and health considerations, 7.4, sea level rise overlay zone, 8.0, signage, 8.1, definitions, 8.2, administration, 8.3, signage permits, 8.4, applications and plans, 8.5, signage variances, 8.6, prohibited signs, 8.7, number of signs on residential properties, 8.8, number of signs on commercial properties, 8.9, number of signs in institutional green space zones, 8.10, green sign area calculations, 8.11, general standards for signs, 8.12, standards for specific types of signs, 8.12.1, I always say this wrong. Fascia. I always want to say fascisha or something. Signs, 8.12.2, thank you, Councillor Hurdle, freestanding signs, 8.12.3, awnings, 8.12.4, street banners, 8.12.5, non-commercial temporary signs, 8.12.6, projecting or flag signs, 8.12.7, window signs, 8.13, maintenance of signs, 8.14, non-conforming existing signs, 8.15, election signs, 8.16, exemptions, 8.17, abandoned unlawful signs, 8.18, refusal of a sign permit, 8.19, revocation of a sign permit, 9.0, repeal and transition, and then there's some Schedule A's, which is the zoning map of the historic business district, town plat and environs, and the sea level rise overlay zone map. So, did I get that all? You guys want to hear it again? Thank you. Thank you. So that has been read. Let me jump ahead back to the package to get the date. It was read the first time. One quick second. I think it was page 101 if I remember.
The first time, March 7th.
March 7th, and now read the second time here on April, hard to believe, 19th. So that's gone to second reading. You got to think there's a better way to read that. But we will have to do it again. So appreciate council's patience. That is it for motions for this evening. Is there any reason to go to closed session though before we get into back to the agenda? Okay, and under what
Under
reason?
68.1D, acquisition of land or
Thank you
disposition of
very
assets.
much. All right, so there's no new business. Question period, did anything come forward?
Your worship, no emails or correspondence has come forward to this agenda.
Thank you. We've all had a lot of conversation. Any comments from any member of council? Myself, I'm good. Okay, good. Again, for the reason for closed session was, what was the number? 68.1D. All right, for that reason, I'll be looking for a motion to go into closed session. I've got Councillor Hurdle and seconded. I looked specifically to the right, and I'm going to give it to Councillor Gumashell, because I think I left him out a couple times. All in favor of going to closed session, please signify by saying aye. There's 3 here and 2 there. We're good. We're in closed session. We'll give a moment for everybody to shut down, and thanks to the public for attending tonight.